Hello, it's Michele for Canada at NRA Space Law with Gerry Gagnon, Gerry for Canada at NRA Space Law. Say hello, Gerry.
Hello, Michele. Good morning.
Good morning. Okay, so this is April 25th, 2022, the date of this recording, but it's kind of irrelevant because this is an issue in Canada that's been going on for a while, and that is going to be going on for a little while. Hopefully we can all get together and talk about this issue and solve it. So Gerry, I'm going to literally pass it on to Gerry because he was sick for a period of time and he is doing fantastically well. I'm super proud of you, Gerry. I just want to say that before I pass it on to you. And I'm excited now to help Gerry educate us because he's been my greatest teacher of my entire life. And that's what we want to do with these videos is give Gerry the opportunity to talk. So it's your turn, Gerry. Why don't you tell us a bit about NRA Space Law?
Well, this all began a number of years back when Michele phoned me one day and we were talking about different things. And I believe it was, she asked me, why was it that Aboriginals were treated differently legally in Canada? Like, what was the foundation for that? Didn't we all have equal rights as citizens? How does this come about? And I started explaining to her our Constitution and the fact that the Canadian Constitution is not designed with all Canadian citizens have equal rights under the law, but in fact has categories of rights. Included in those categories were the Aboriginals, who were treated as a separate entity from the rest of Canadians in terms of their constitutional rights. Then there is Francophones and Quebec as a province, which is treated distinctly compared to the rest of Canadians and their legal rights. Then there is the issue of Catholic schooling and the fact that only Catholics are allowed separate publicly funded schooling from the public school system. And so there were built in from the very beginning in 1867, Canada had these differing constitutional rights depending on which of these categories you fell into. And as I went on about the Aboriginal issue with her and explained the historical background of all of this stuff, the term race-based law came up somewhere in that discussion. And the fact that certainly in the case of the Aboriginals, this was the case, that it was because of belonging to this particular ethnicity or race that one inherited these differing rights under the Canadian Constitution. And so the next step from that, of course, was ending race-based law, because we firmly believe that a country can only be unified at its core if all of its citizens have equal rights before the law.
May I jump in, Gerry?
Yes, you sure can.
Because that's literally what happened in the conversation. It was such a fast conversation. I phoned him. I said, Gerry, what's this? Because if you want to know anything, call Gerry. I swear to God. And that's why we're doing these vlogs, because from here on in, if you want to know something, call Gerry. And we're going to leave phone numbers open and all that kind of stuff. But this is how it happened. I was like, what about this? And he explained this. And I said, what about that? So these are race laws. And then blah, blah, blah. By the end of the conversation, I said, that's it. That's what we're doing. End race-based law. It happened that fast. Exactly like Gerry said. We just went from one thing to the next. It's like, how did this happen? Here I am, a grown woman in Canada. I didn't even know that this happened in my country. I thought that we weren't racist, and we are so racist, and not the way that the United Nations and globalists are trying to make us seem racist. No, we have native supremacy in Canada. That's the only supremacy we have. I'll pass it on to you, Gerry.
Well, and then of course there were the new constitutional additions in 1982, what they now call the Constitution Act of 1982, which was Pierre Trudeau's gem, if you will. And in that was included what we know as the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Now, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms were supposed to guarantee the legal equality of all Canadian citizens. But right off the bat, Section 35 of the new Constitution Act, which enables all of these inherent treaty rights, etc., for Aboriginals was deliberately placed outside of the charter in the new act. So that, yeah, for the rest of Canadians, you got blah, 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 but Aboriginals, they're separate still. And we're going to re-emphasize that point by excluding them from the charter and giving them their own special clause and rights. That is, the charter goes up to, I believe, section 33 in the new Constitution Act. And then there comes section 35. And it's deliberately physically replaced or placed outside of the charter body itself. Then within the charter, they added a new exclusionary tool to our Constitution. Section 15 is always lauded as the part of the charter that specifically states that we all have equal legal rights as citizens in Canada, regardless of sex, regardless of race, regardless of anything. We have equal legal rights. That's section 15, subsection 1. Immediately below that, which nobody seems to bother reading, is subsection 2, which, to paraphrase, says, well, in spite of the fact that we've just given everybody equal legal rights in section 1, if the government determines that a particular group is disadvantaged or marginalized somehow within society, they can do special rights programs for these marginalized groups that don't apply to all the rest of Canadian citizens.
So everyone is equal, except some are more equal than others.
It's exactly, it's as if they were mocking Orwell, not just hadn't read him or were using him as a manual, but were mocking him with this. And it's right below, it's still in section 15, and it immediately contradicts this firm affirmation of principle that's in 15.1, right? That says, oh, now we all got equal legal rights in Canada. Immediately, they subvert it in the section right below it. And so the new constitutional changes simply exaggerated the problem of unequal legal rights. It led to, for instance, in the Aboriginal case, to what we now know as the Gladue rule in court sentencing, which is where it's now in our criminal code and in a Supreme Court ruling that judges, before they sentence someone who's designated as an Aboriginal, must give them special consideration because of the fact they're Aboriginal. And therefore, they should get a lesser sentence.
Meanwhile, all the people that went through all the world wars, that were traumatized, displaced, they don't get any special anything. The natives didn't go through anything more or worse than anyone else. In fact, they went through a lot less. Like, if you had to actually do a test, a comparison, they went through way less than most cultures and races. Like, it's kind of really weird. I mean, it's not weird. It's purposeful from the United Nations. They're doing this on purpose. This is, they want to divide and conquer. They want us divided. And they also want, just like they did in the United States, this critical race theory, that's Native studies. Okay, all that critical race theory came here in Canada too. They literally taught the natives. They first of all, they got the natives to take back their education. They wanted to take their education as if they were really educating themselves in their native actual history. No, it's just Native studies, a lot of lying. That's what Gerry and I do in End Race-Based Law. Gerry was doing story after story after story, unraveling the lies that they're being told in their Native studies and their white supremacy class. It's just literally genocide against white people using the natives. They're going to take the land using the natives. The United Nations are going to take the land using the natives. They're going to cause race war here. And then they're just going to take it all from the natives. And the natives don't get that. And so this is what Gerry and I do. I just want to say this, Gerry is the best researcher in all of Canada on this subject. There's nobody who outdoes him, not Frances, is it Widdowson, Gerry? What's her name? All of them, yes. All of them put together. Gerry's combined all of their research and put it up online. He's the only one that's really condensed everything together. And the history, the real history is being lost. And so I'm going to pass it back to you, Gerry, because he's the expert. I'm not the expert. Gerry does long, extensive, super in-depth research that I literally can't even get through. It's so good. So if you want to know this subject, go look at nracebasedlaw.ca, nracebasedlaw.com. Gerry's done, what is it? We're 8 years, Gerry, 8 years of your research now.
Yeah, it's over 1,000 posts, 1,000.
Over 1,000 posts. He should win an award. And I'm not just saying that. This guy is, he's a sensational researcher, and everything there's no bias involved in any of it. It's real research. It's the real history of what's going on in Canada with this whole issue, the treaties, because they're saying honor the treaties and they're not honoring the treaties. Like everything is a lie, like everything is from the globalists, and the natives are being used, sucked in and used. And they're really good to use. I will say, I'm going to pass it on to Gerry, but in my experience with this whole issue, we got involved late 2013, early 2014. Never in my life, still to this very day, have I ever heard such racist dialogue as I've heard from the Native youth here in Canada since they started implementing critical race theory as Native studies and this white supremacy bullshit that doesn't exist. The only thing that exists in Canada is Native supremacy. Back to you, Gerry.
Well, I would just point out in my own defense, because I've been called racist so many times now, it just it's water off the back, if you will. The reason I have spent so much time and energy focusing on this topic is not because I have some particular obsession with Aboriginals or the Aboriginal issue. It's the fact that nobody else dares to touch this issue in this country. Academics like Francis Widdowson are persecuted, and their tenured teaching positions are threatened. They are physically threatened for daring to contradict the mainstream narrative on this subject.
You get called a racist. You can't even say the truth. You can't even say they have an alcohol and incest problem. You can't say that that's racist, even though they have an alcohol and incest problem.
I have nothing to lose in this case. I don't have an academic position to lose. Therefore, I can feel free to let my conscience be my guide, and I don't really have to face the consequences aside from the name calling.
May I jump in? Sorry, Gerry, I'm going to jump in there. That's not true. We have been stalked, harassed, abused. We've been put on websites. I've been falsely charged. Like Gerry's lost his job. We've been through, you can't even believe what we have been through just to even talk about this subject. Gerry almost died. Okay, Gerry, yeah, they almost killed you. I still believe it was from the stress of everything that happened to us. I really do.
I'm just referring to this present moment in time.
Look how good he's doing great. Okay. I love you, Gerry. I really do.
We have made it past all of that, and although it won't ever end, but we've learned to cope with it, if I can put it that way.
We have.
Now, back to the Constitution, if I may. The changes that were made in 1982 only made matters worse. It allowed the courts, especially the Supreme Court of Canada, it enabled them for a whole series of rulings that have created what we refer to as the Aboriginal industry. That industry is $1 billion industry now in this country. And of course, the main beneficiaries of it are lawyers, not the Aboriginal people themselves. It has allowed the Supreme Court to, well, the one that most offends me is that when the Supreme Court ruled that Aboriginals could use oral testimony as valid research or documentation, if you will, in a court case. Now, no other Canadians are allowed to say what amounts to hearsay on the dock under oath in a courtroom and get away with it if they cannot provide some kind of documentation or another person verifying what they say is true, or
Gerry, can I jump in?
These are all of the methods.
Just for a moment, Gerry, because I want to say this is very important, because what's happening now is these treaties were very, very, like they were researched. Like this was a really serious thing, these treaties, and everyone was consulted. There was tons of documents about it. Like the land was ceded. And so now what they're saying is they heard their grandfather say that they didn't understand anything about the treaties. So that hearsay is really super relevant in all these court cases. They can basically say anything they want. And just to be clear, the natives lie. It's part of their culture. It was part of their culture before they were given all of this court stuff to be able to lie in, like just freely lie. They can just freely say whatever they want and lie. That's, sorry, back to you, Gerry. That's what's happening. You can lie in court now and say anything you want.
Well, and even if it's not lying, most Canadians have probably heard about research studies that show you can start in a room with a person telling a story and then passing it to the next person. By the time it gets to the end of the room, the story has drastically changed.
Gerry's being very generous. The natives literally have a history of lying.
But anyway, but this is also true though. This is why the courts didn't accept unsubstantiated oral testimony, is because there's not only the bias inherent in that, there's the fact that stories change as they pass to second and third people along the line, right? The stories just get changed. That's the way people are. That's why we write things down and what we call black and white, and we have signatures appended to it, like the treaties themselves. So the Supreme Court ruled that no, these oral testimonies were not only equal to all of the historical documentation we have about the treaties, but actually supersede the historical. If there's a conflict between the two, we accept the oral testimony of an Aboriginal over the documented historical evidence that we have. Now, this is not only racist, it fundamentally undermines a principle of Western law, which is you have to have hard evidence of the things you say under oath in a courtroom, or it's dismissed. Objections are presented, blah, blah, I object, and the judge says, strike that testimony from the record. Okay, this is what happens all the time in courtrooms, except when it's an Aboriginal rights case at our highest court in the land, the Supreme Court of Canada. Now, this is ridiculous. It's an embarrassment to our country. It's not even about Aboriginals. It's about these judges. It's about the subversion of a fundamental principle of Western law on a racist basis. Like, it should be offensive to all Canadians. It should be offensive particularly to all lawyers, to all of those who believe in the legal profession and believe in justice within the legal profession. This is intolerable, an intolerable situation.
And may I say, the reason why we named our company End Race-Based Law is because we knew that we were going to be attacked and called racist, and our company would be called End Race-Based Law, and only the stupidest of people couldn't see how racist they were being by allowing race laws. Race laws are racist, period. You can't support any kind of race laws and not be a racist.
The number of times I have been called a racist for stating that all Canadians should have equal rights before the law. Such a simple, basic,
equality is racist.
Equality of Western law, of Western civilization. Suddenly that's racist now. Yeah. You're racist if you're not racist. Like this is goofiness that Orwell didn't even conceive of.
Gerry, I think we might be at our time limit. And what I want to say is, at this particular episode, I want to wrap it up, but I want to continue to the next episode, which was something we're going to do often. If we find, we want to keep these episodes at a really like listenable size, digestible size, and have another episode if we feel like we need to go on, and we need to talk about the petition that we created. But at this particular point, we are at a limit of our vlog. Mm-hmm. So Gerry, we need to wrap this up. Gerry is the best teacher I've ever known in my life. I'm super excited about presenting him to you. And I know he doesn't have a big ego, but I'm really excited about this series that we're going to do. And I'm really hoping that people tune in and listen to Gerry, and please ask him questions. He can answer pretty much anything. And if he doesn't know it at the moment, he'll go find it out, and he'll find out everything about it, like everything, more than you could in a very short amount of time. He can read like, right? Thank you, Gerry. I'm going to pass this back on to you to close it up, but I just wanted to thank you very, very much for not only like surviving everything that happened and still being here with us, but but being willing to share everything you've got with Canada, because we need you badly. That's all I got to say is I've told you that a million times, Gerry. We need you so badly.
You're gonna make me blush here. I would just say that it's been obvious, especially through all of the pandemic issues, that Canadians are really concerned about what rights they do or don't have. And the Constitution and the fundamental rights we have as citizens should be the thing that unites us as a nation.
Yeah.
If you segment those rights according to differing groups, then you immediately start dividing the nation.
They want us,
unifying it.
Gerry, they want us divided. The Natives have to come with us in this. They just have to.
So for anyone who wonders where we're coming from, that's where we're coming from. We have to have a unifying foundation in law and our Constitution and our rights, or we can't be a nation. We will inevitably fragment into pieces.
Mhm.
The choice is up to the people of Canada, not me. So thank you, those of you who have bothered to last to the end of this. I appreciate it. Michele appreciates it. And I hope we'll see you again in the future.
All right, everyone, I'm going to wrap this up too. And race-based law, we can do this together. And I love you, Natives. I really do. You're super racist and you have to stop, okay? That's all I got to say. Bye. And race-based law.